And that's why you shouldn't keep packages that were delivered to you by accident. Welcome back, I am the Black Belt Barrister, as seen on TikTok, which has grown a lot quicker than YouTube has lately. But I'm hoping to grow both, so I'm going to combine vlogs on YouTube with snippets of law. In the first instance, I'm going to pick up some random questions that people definitely answer and are curious for the answers to, and also have a little bit of search traffic on YouTube. But I'm going to pick patrons' questions for those of you that join me at patreon.com/blackbeltbarrister. The link will be in the description. And I'm going to pick those questions and dissect them in a legal analysis for your educational enjoyment. So check that out as well. Now back to the question. So many people are curious, if you have a package delivered to you by accident, are you allowed to keep it? Now this has been a huge deal during the pandemic because couriers are just delivering packages to your door and then disappearing. Sometimes they ring the bell, sometimes they pretend to ring the bell. I've returned home and just found packages at the door. I've also had couriers claim to have tried to deliver 3 or 4 times, and that's just impossible because nobody can even walk past my house without my phone and my iPad and everything beeping to tell me that someone walked past my house. But aside from all of that, the question remains, if something has genuinely been delivered to you in error and it's addressed to somebody else, many people ask the question whether it's okay to keep it. And as I said at the outset of the video, the simple answer is no. And the longer answer has a very good explanation. The explanation hinges on honesty versus dishonesty. So if you have a package that's delivered to you, first of all, you know that it doesn't belong to you because it's not addressed to you. It's addressed to somebody else. Perhaps they've got your address, but they've got a different name. If you know for certain that you didn't order this thing and it's not you that's supposed to receive it, then it is supposed to go to someone else, even if they've got the address wrong and they've got your address and it's been delivered to you for that reason. In another scenario, it could be completely wrong and it doesn't even have your address on it. And let's say there's a very slight mix-up where one is a road, one is a close, one is an avenue, and you live on the avenue, but there is a road with the same name, but it's come to you by mistake, so it's completely wrong. Either of these scenarios lead to the same conclusion, that the package is not intended for you, it's intended for someone else. And on top of that, it's almost always possible, whether from the outside of the packaging or certainly if you opened it and on the inside of the packaging, you would be able to find out who sent this parcel. So if those things are true, that you know that it's not yours and it's not intended for you, therefore it belongs to somebody else, and you've got a reasonable opportunity to find out who it does belong to, i.e. you can find out who sent it and therefore find out who it should have gone to. In one of those examples, if you know that there's an address that's very similar to yours and it's round the corner, or perhaps they've got the wrong house and it's next door, things like that, you have a reasonable opportunity to find out who actually owns it. And if you can do that and you don't, and instead you keep it, this could amount to theft because you're keeping something that doesn't belong to you. And then we have to break down the elements of theft. It's the dishonest appropriation of property belonging to another with the intention of permanently depriving that other person of it. We can break this down to this package analysis as follows. I like to think of the appropriation and the dishonest part somewhat together. Appropriating something is just having it, taking it, keeping it, something like that. The dishonesty aspect is if you know that it belongs to somebody else and you've got an opportunity to return it, but you decide instead you're going to keep it. To me, that's a dishonest appropriation. You've got it and you're dishonestly continuing. Even if it came to you initially, that's not a dishonest appropriation because it just came to you. But you can dishonestly appropriate it by keeping it. Next is property belonging to another. So this is clearly property that's delivered to you. If it's clearly in error and it clearly belongs to someone else, that's an easy satisfaction of this element of the test. And finally, the intention to permanently deprive. So if, for argument's sake, you've had this delivered to you and you think to yourself, well, I'm far too busy to return this right now, I'll do it next week or in a couple of weeks, then you don't have the intention to permanently deprive the other person of this property. That would therefore not amount to theft because you've got it there, you do plan to give it back, you're just far too busy. And if it's going to go out of your way to give it back, then you might reasonably delay that until you do have the time. But taking the scenario together, if you receive something and you know that it doesn't belong to you, you can reasonably find out who it does belong to, but you make the decision to keep it permanently and permanently deprive the other person of it, you've satisfied the elements of theft. One exception, however, might be if a company has sent you goods which are just unsolicited, but they've sent them to you by your name, your address, they've definitely intended them for you, and as far as you can see, they aren't intended for anybody else. In this scenario, there's no obligation generally to return them to the company because they are just unsolicited and they've sent them to you. But for good measure, if it were me, I would get in touch with the company just to clarify that they have sent them to you deliberately without charge and that you are free to keep them. This means that if there's any arguments or accusations against you for keeping them without having paid for them, you've got some sort of evidence, paper trail and record that you've made touch with the company. And now for something completely different. I love growing fresh herbs and spices for my own cooking. So basil here, rosemary, parsley and garlic. If anyone's got any idea on what to do with these garlic, because they're just getting really tall and I don't really know what to do with them. They're probably in a too small a tub, to be honest, but nevertheless. This one here, I've got loads of chilies and I'm hoping that they grow. But the good news is I have a Scotch bonnet seedling coming out. Actually, I got 3. The bottom 2 are just pushing out of the dirt. But yeah, really looking forward to those because those Scotch bonnet chilies are totally awesome. So yeah, any assistance with the garlic would be greatly appreciated. I'm not really sure what I'm doing with the garlic. They've just grown really tall and I just thought it'd be cool to grow garlic. So let's give it a whirl.